South Korean and Japanese defense ministers sit down for talks earlier this week while North Korea concludes its final test of an advanced solid-fuel rocket engine that pundits say may change the strategic balance in East Asia. Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Press Perspective. It's Wednesday, September 10th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sunhee. Tensions persist on the Korean peninsula as North Korea remains defiant in its aggressive pursuit of weapons technology. We cover this and more today, and for that, I have Ruy Valdes with Spanish news agency EFE Spain here in the studio. Ruy, welcome back.
Nice to be here, Sunhee.
I also have Chloe Borgnon with French broadcaster France 24. Chloe, it's great to have you here.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here.
Ruy, we will start with you. So let's begin with details of the meeting between South Korean and Japanese defense ministers here in the capital city back on Monday, I believe. What was shared and what makes this particular meeting, Ruy, significant?
Yes, well, the significance of this meeting is that it was the first time the defense minister of Japan visits Seoul in 10 years. So this is another signal of the new approach that Lee administration is having towards Japan. Why I say a new approach? Because we need to remember Lee Jae-myung administration, it's a liberal administration from the Democratic Party, and there has always been, let's say, a more tense relationships between Japan and liberal administrations in South Korea. There has been a summit with Prime Minister Ishiba and other signals from Lee administration that this time was going to be a little bit different, that they were going to be more tolerant, and especially by many pundits, this closer relationship maybe it's not necessarily a choice by the administration, but it's also because of the circumstances of North Korea getting more advanced weapons and their closer relationship to Russia. So, well, being that said, the Japan defense ministers come and visit, and they still commit to the denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. This has been reiterated many times in terms of their alliance with the U.S., and it now even becomes more significant because, as we saw last week during China's parade because of the end of World War II, we saw this very potent image of Kim Jong-un sitting right next to Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, which many interpret as a new or as a strengthening of this alliance, or somehow a validation of Xi Jinping about North Korean policies in terms of the defense and probably the relationship with Russia. There's still some gray areas that we cannot say 100% that China is validating fully this new relationship, but at least it's pretty symbolic to have him next to him in this parade. Among other things, they explore cooperation in high-tech defense fields such as AI, and there is one thing that I think I should point out. The optimism regarding the relationship between Japan and South Korea with the new government of South Korea grew when, after the summit of President Lee and Prime Minister Ishiba. Nevertheless, Ishiba announced he's stepping down, and in Japan there is a new presence of what many say is an extreme right party, and it has a considerable power in parliament, which means that probably the new Prime Minister of Japan will have to attend or to deal with this new party that is promoting ideas that for sure are not in the interest of South Korea, like historical disputes and many other things. Still, maybe because of the circumstances of North Korea getting stronger, etc., maybe the new Prime Minister of Japan will not have a choice and they will maintain this relationship as it is, but it remains to be seen.
Right, indeed. Chloe, then, as Ruy mentioned, the Japanese Prime Minister, that is Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, he announced his resignation this past Sunday, prompting quite a lot of speculation about the future of Seoul-Tokyo ties. What have you been hearing?
Yeah, so the presidential office of South Korea has been discussing the matter on Monday. What they've been saying is, in the past, as Ruy just said, that the two countries have actually been able to discuss. President Lee Jae-myung and Prime Minister Ishiba have been able to discuss. They have reached what the presidential office called a broad consensus on building a future-oriented relationship. So they've been discussing quite a lot of subjects. I mean, this is nothing new, the fact that the diplomacy is still going on and they're trying to make sure that the links are mended. There is the idea that they are expecting to continue to have positive relationship with their neighbors, because right now President Lee Jae-myung has said quite a few times that the relationship with the US, with the United States and with Japan is quite important for South Korea. Then obviously the presidential office, they also added that they were not going to comment on Japan domestic politics. So on that point, they've been trying to show that they're quite optimistic and that it should continue like business as usual. We still know that there might be some tension. So as Ruy just mentioned, there is the idea that we don't know who is going to succeed to Prime Minister Ishiba. There is a risk that if the successor is not at the same level of willing to commit to discussing with South Korea, the relationship obviously might be strained. And as Ruy said, actually, the South Korean medias have shown that the two frontrunners to replace Prime Minister Ishiba are leaning further right, so further away from mending a relationship with South Korea. We also know that there is still some tension going on. Even with Prime Minister Ishiba still being here, South Korea wants to boycott Japan's upcoming celebration ceremony in Sado Mines because of the wartime forced labor of Korean over there, and the idea that Japan is lacking sincerity in honoring the victims. So we know that there are still especially historical points that are a big source of tension. And again, we also have from here in South Korea the idea that President Lee Jae-myung has been trying to open more to Japan, but he might be under pressure from the Democrat Party, well, some of them, they be taking a tougher line on history with Japan. So we have to see if both sides were suddenly to be going further away from each other and standing more on their position, we might have a bit of more of a tense position, but as we saw for now, it's quite the optimistic approach that's been taken by the presidential office.
Right then, Ruy, amid this fresh uncertainty over geopolitics, North Korea's Kim Jong-un reportedly oversaw that is, a final test of a new ICBM engine that's solid fuel-based. Could you tell us more about this latest test and its broader implications?
Right, yeah, well, it's a complex answer. First of all, what we should focus is that the KCNA, the state agency of North Korea, mentioned that this is the final test, which means for many pundits that probably we will get to see the new missile called Hwasong-20 in the parade next month because of the anniversary of the foundation of the ruling party of North Korea. At the same time, what we're seeing here is, well, many people would ask, well, what's new with this missile? Well, or this motor that will be applied to this new missile. The thing is that the new missile will have the capacity to strike multiple objectives at the same time. Already North Korea had the capacity to reach, with the previous models, Hwasong 19 and 18, the US continental territory. But this new missile will be harder to intercept, and as I say, be able to attack different objectives at the same time. So if it happens that there's a revelation in the parade of next month, and then other experts said that that would mean that maybe by the end of the year or early next year, we will see a test of this stronger missile, which Kim Jong-un also mentioned is part of this nuclear development of North Korea, and represents it would represent a big threat in the sense of the power of North Korea. That's one point. The second point is that some pundits also say that this missile could have been developed with Russia's cooperation. because of the carbon fiber that it contains, that apparently is not hard to trade or it's not subject to sanctions as strong as other materials that could be used for military purposes. So they suspect that after this strengthening of relationships between Moscow and Pyongyang, Moscow could have provided either the material or the knowledge to develop the missile. Also, many people are interpreting this that Kim Jong-un is showing publicly or to the foreign media about this because he's trying to use it as a leverage for a potential meeting with Donald Trump. As we have all heard in the previous shows, Donald Trump is looking to meeting soon with the ruler of North Korea. If we talk about leverage, well, right now is a good moment for Kim Jong-un because he doesn't only have the missiles, he only has seemingly the support from Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, at least to a level that we have never seen before, nor his predecessors. But at the same time, some pundits believe that there is still the question can be raised of why would North Korea want to meet US right now? Regardless, maybe they have more leverage or whatever we can say, but there's 2 points. North Korea keeps insisting that they will not denuclearize, and they have said this so many times, and now they have enough reasons not to do it, as watching how US acts, let's say, when bombing Iran or other reasons. And there was also a pretty interesting article by the New York Times recently where they revealed that in 2019 there was an infiltration by Navy SEALs into North Korea. This operation failed. They were trying to spy on Kim Jong-un before the summit with Trump, which was in the first term, and they end up killing the U.S. soldiers end up killing 2 or 3 North Korean civilians, and then head back and cancel the operation. Probably this was already known by North Korea, but it is new that now it's public knowledge, right? Well, assuming that everything is true, the New York Times validated this with multiple sources, and even today, Yonhap mentioned that a source from the South Korean government, he never validated really the operation, but he said that there was some actions by South Korea, like a purge of spies and other things around those dates in February, before February 2019. So kind of saying, well, this could have been a reaction to that infiltration. And now that it's public, maybe North Korea has another reason to not meet with the US and say, well, look, everybody knows what you did to us. Maybe we will not acknowledge it because acknowledging would mean that we will say that we are weak and we can let other countries infiltrate to our territory, but the public knows. We don't have to explain.
Right, there is one aspect shared by pundits as well, of course. Chloe, against this backdrop, Chinese leader Xi Jinping, he has reiterated his intentions to promote close cooperation between Beijing and Pyongyang. Could you give us some context behind these latest comments?
Yeah, so this comment was shared again by the North Korean state media, KCNA. It was actually a message from Xi Jinping to Kim Jong-un to congratulate him on the 77th anniversary of the founding of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. That's the official name of North Korea. What we can say is that Xi Jinping has been saying that he wants to promote friendship between the two socialist countries, the two comrades. We've seen it. I mean, again, Ruy said it as well, that on the September 3rd, with the military parade in Beijing, we saw that there was a real will from Xi Jinping to be putting Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un on his sides, kind of showing that the 3 countries are allies. It might also be a political message against the United States, you know, like showing that they are making a stronger alliance against the United States. They've been kind of focusing very strongly on China. It was also said to have been a way to strengthen the alliance between China and North Korea, because it has been a bit frayed, a bit bristled by the closeness of Russia and North Korea recently. But North Korea still needs to get close to all of its allies because they are still under quite a lot of international sanctions, especially on the economical side, and they do need all the help and all the alliance they could get for now. So this is probably what we can think of when we read the idea of a closer cooperation between the two countries.
Right, and speaking about Xi Jinping, Ruy, the Chinese leader also spoke at an extraordinary session of BRICS, or a virtual session, that is, a virtual summit that took place earlier this week. What exactly did he say, and what do his words tell us about the future of global trade, do you think?
Yes, Xi Jinping used the BRICS stage to send a clear message: resist US tariffs, keep borders open, and rally the global south. And this is quite intriguing, we can call it like that, because it's really another way to show how the world has changed. Now we have US promoting protectionism, and we have China, which is the most powerful socialist country, if you want to call it, saying that we should have an open world economy. So as a signal of that, and to let's say gather the trust of all the members of the BRICS, Xi Jinping also stated, or remind everybody, how this group represents nearly half of the world population. They have 30% of global output and 1/5 of global trade, meaning that they have a lot of leverage to fight against all these measures that the US is promoting, like the tariffs and even other types of blockages or attitudes against many of these countries, including India and Brazil. Recently, we also saw how India sent messages that they could get closer to China if the administration of Donald Trump keeps going against them. Brazil and India, just as an example, they face up to 50% of tariffs on most products. They are clearly not happy on how Donald Trump administration has even tried to influence their local policy, like the example with former President Bolsonaro, et cetera, et cetera. So basically what President Xi promoted is that BRICS can serve as a counterweight platform against the intentions of the US. And probably what he wants to do is to either preserve or find a way to have supply chains that, or some kind of cooperation or regional cooperation that they can make this bloc stronger against, or to protect at least temporary for these things. And what we still need to know is that this is all rhetorical still, but there's a lack of concrete mechanism of how this will work. But if you pay attention to all the recent news, at least signals or symbols that we have been seeing from China, I would take this seriously.
Right, and with regard to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he chose to skip the virtual BRICS summit, but he was in Tianjin over a week ago to join the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit. What has been said about Modi's absence at the virtual BRICS summit, Chloe?
So what has been said is that it is kind of sending, obviously, a political message. As Ruy explained, this virtual meeting, was supposed to discuss global trade tension because of the tariffs imposed by the US. So the problem for India is that right now they are trying to negotiate to kind of get it down, because they are at 50%. It's one of the highest tariffs in the world. So it is a political move to try and get closer to the United States, to get on their good side. And obviously, for Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he already came to Beijing also last week. So it could also already be questioned by the United States on which side are you. So this time, was it a will, were there a will to not upset the United States? That's what most pundits were actually saying. Also because things seems to be going better for India on that side of negotiation, just looking at, obviously, Donald Trump, because he said last week that there was absolutely nothing to worry about for United States and India relationship. He said that the two countries had, I'm quoting him, a special relationship. He called the Prime Minister Modi a great Prime Minister. So, you know, we know how Donald Trump works on that side. Obviously, it's always good to be on his good side, but it's hard for India because they still need to show support to the BRICS, because they still have allies there. And as Ruy was saying, when you look at the numbers, the BRICS are still a strong bloc to take into account. So it's a difficult position for India to try to not upset any of the two sides. So we'll see how it can go and maybe how it can play for India in the negotiation of the tariffs.
Right. And speaking about Mr. Trump, Ruy, we have time for one more question. He recently renamed the Pentagon. He's calling it the Department of War. Could you tell us a bit about the reason behind the renaming and the response to it?
Right. Well, recently he renamed to Department of War, the Pentagon to Department of War, as a secondary title. Still, as we know, it's very common to use it, and it will involve changing the emblem, stationery, plaque signage, which won't be cheap. His argument is that he wants to show like a strength of U.S. in the sense of kind of in a nostalgic sense of the past victories, like they have in the world wars, and this way people, or at least the White House would convey strength, readiness, and resolve. He even called that defense is too defensive, so that's why he's gonna change it. And you have to protect both offense and defense. That was more or less what he was arguing. The critics, they have been saying that this is kind of a contradiction because he has presented himself many times as a peacemaker, and many people think that he's even following to win the Nobel Peace Prize. So this will break this discourse. And of course, the part of the cost that I already mentioned. And look, I mean, what we know is that this could be just branding politics, or maybe it is a strategy, but many people would call it like that. He has been claiming to his voters that U.S. will regain this type of nostalgic idea of what superpower they used to be. But I wouldn't, or many pundits also, wouldn't believe 100% that this goes in line. And let me explain it a little bit better. Sometimes when somebody insists a lot in we're the strongest, we have the most power, maybe the signal is completely the opposite. Maybe what we are seeing is that there is so much a craving to use this rhetoric, because probably what is really happening is the whole opposite. Maybe we're seeing, that probably U.S. is not in their best moment.
All right, I suppose time will show, then time will tell us then. Well, that's all the time we have for this edition. So, Ruy, as always, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you, Sunhee.
Chloe, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, that ends this edition of Press Perspective. We'll return same time tomorrow with more panel discussions. So join us then, and thank you for now.